It's Thursday the 18th of December from the MEN newsroom. This is Channel M's Lunchtime News and these are today's headlines. Over the limit, Greater Manchester tops a table of the country's alcohol black spots.
The amount of youngsters drinking on the street is a lot worse than I remember it a couple of years ago, you know what I mean?
Also this lunchtime, delete my DNA, the message from a man who says police have no right to keep his details on file.
The European Court of Human Rights has just ruled that by continuing to hold this information after freeing me without charge, they are violating my human rights.
And shutting up shop, the workers at Woolworths facing up to being unemployed.
No good, because Woolworths is here, I think, over 100 years, so less work for me, less work for everybody over here. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Our top story this lunchtime. Manchester has been named as the worst alcohol black spot in the country. It's topped a league table for the worst record of people harming themselves by having too much to drink. As well as Manchester itself, 4 other boroughs appear in the top 10. They are Salford, Tameside, Oldham and Rochdale. One of the main factors measured is the number of people ending up in hospital because of their drinking. New figures show there were 800,000 alcohol-related admissions during 2006-7. That's an increase of 9% on the year before and works out at an average of 174 extra admissions every day. We've been out asking people why they think this part of the world has such a problem.
The amount of youngsters drinking on the street is a lot worse than I remember it a couple of years ago, you know what I mean? I mean, for instance, I've just passed about 10 teenagers just over there at the corner, all already drinking at, like, what, 10 o'clock in the morning? I mean, what's all that about?
I think some of it's got to do with backgrounds and, you know, the way they're brought up, and I guess some of them can't find work, finding it hard to get work.
It could be sorted out if, to be quite honest, if there was more police out and about and more ID needed to be shown.
I just think there's too many people walking around with drinks in their hands. Might not be in the city centre, in the actual town centre, but on the outskirts. They're walking around and it's quite scary, really.
I've lived it all my life and I put it down to where people are quite depressed. The job and employment is quite high. And in general, that's how it's been for a long time.
I usually go out most weekends into Manchester, and to be honest, I've never seen any problems, so...
But I mean, you've never come across somebody drinking to excess and acting in a way that made you feel uncomfortable?
Not really, no.
Well, we can get some more on this story now, and joining us is Dr Alison Giles from the Our Life Alcohol Awareness Programme. You campaign for more alcohol awareness. How much does today's report come as a surprise to you?
It's part of a growing trend that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years, so it's not a surprise, but it's just a shame that, you know, we're still on that upward trend at the moment.
So how bad is it in this area, what they've found?
Well, we're seeing that the North West has 7 of the 10 worst areas in terms of hospital admissions and crime and other indicators of the problem of alcohol. What we don't really understand yet is why, and part of Our Life's role is to get to the bottom of it and understand what drives people in the North West to drink more than elsewhere in the country.
What do you think could be some of the factors, particularly here in Greater Manchester, that are adding up to us having such a poor rating?
Well, we've seen a lot of regeneration over the last few years, so deprived areas are getting a lot more money invested in them, and a lot of that is actually bars, restaurants, nightclubs and, you know, the nighttime economy. So we're seeing a lot of people coming from all around the North West and out of the region into our town centres and our cities. So, you know, there's more opportunity to drink, but we also see that supermarkets are in price wars now, cutting their price, you know, slashing alcohol prices now. So the affordability and the availability of drink is just, you know, phenomenal now.
What would you like to see done to try to improve things?
As a campaigning organisation, our main focus is about price and the fact that we want to see a minimum price per unit of alcohol so that you can't get units of alcohol sold for as little as 16p in supermarkets. What we're seeing across the region, though, is much better partnership now between the police, local authorities and the NHS, so huge amount will happen, and we hope that this is the peak of the problem and that we'll start to see a decline in the next few years.
OK, thank you very much for coming in and talking to us about that this lunchtime. Let's check some more of today's top stories now, and the man in charge of the country's ambulance services says they're struggling to cope with record numbers of call-outs. They've had their busiest week ever after the coldest start to a winter in 30 years. It's led to an increase in people falling over and people suffering with breathing problems. He's appealing for people to make sure that they're only dialing 999 for genuine emergencies. A Rochdale man who shot dead his own wife at their luxury home in Zimbabwe is waiting to be sentenced. Michael Bamford fired a single bullet into Ivy's head 4 years ago, then tried to pretend she'd killed herself. He'd only married the wealthy widow 3 months before her death and had told detectives that she'd been suffering from depression. 3 postmen have been sacked for stealing parcels and dumping more than 5,000 packages. Carl Borg from Swinton sobbed as magistrates jailed him for 16 weeks. He'd been taking the items to fund a gambling problem. Royal Mail found them on a railway embankment and hidden in his loft. Daniel McKeer from Middleton was given a 6-month suspended sentence and ordered to do 250 hours unpaid work. He was caught stuffing greeting card packets down his trousers. Another man, Ian Mitchell from Ashiton Road in Newton Heath, was also given a suspended sentence. A man who says he was wrongly arrested, held as a terrorism suspect and later freed without charge is calling on police to delete his DNA and fingerprint records from their files. Stephen Clark's demand has so far fallen on deaf ears, but now he's hoping a new ruling by a European court may change things.
Stephen Clark is a man of good character. He was awarded an honours degree in politics at Oxford University this summer. He's never been arrested, until one night this autumn when he was arrested twice in the space of a couple of hours.
They arrested me initially on suspicion of causing criminal damage to a grid, which they thought I'd taken a photograph of. They later discovered that no such photographs existed on my mobile phone and that there had been no damage to the grid.
If that sounds a little bit strange, then what happened next sounds even stranger.
Well, after they discovered that there was no damage to the grid, they rearrested me on suspicion of being concerned with the commission, preparation or instigation of a terrorist act.
Right. Were you?
No, certainly not. I've never been involved in terrorism. I never would be involved in terrorism.
Mr. Clark was held in a police cell for 2 days while officers searched his home in Longsight, and his camera phone, laptop computer and memory stick were confiscated and analysed. Later, he was freed without charge. What happens now?
Well, I don't know whether there's much I can do about the arrest. I haven't altogether ruled out the possibility of legal action. But one thing is certain. When I was in custody, they took my DNA and fingerprints and then freed me without charge. Now, the European Court of Human Rights has just ruled that by continuing to hold this information after freeing me without charge, they are violating my human rights.
What would you like to see then?
Well, I'd like the DNA and fingerprints to be destroyed, and if I can watch them doing it, so much the better.
In a statement, Superintendent Chris Uller said Mr. Clark was seen taking photographs of some of the grids which had been searched and sealed during a security operation ahead of the 2008 Labour Party conference. But police have refused to confirm that they found any pictures of grids on Mr. Clark's camera phone, laptop or memory stick. So, what happens now to Stephen Clark's DNA and fingerprint records? Well, I asked Greater Manchester Police that very question and they refused to give me an answer. But that's probably because the Home Office has 3 months to respond to the ruling by the European Court of Human Rights. It looks as though Stephen Clark's going to have to wait a bit longer to see whether he gets his wish. Kevin Duffy for Channel M News.
A family from Rochdale have been threatened at knife point in their own home by masked attackers who then stole their cars. They were watching TV in an upstairs bedroom in Haywood at about 9:20 on Tuesday evening when there was a loud bang at the front door. Shortly afterwards, 3 or 4 men burst through the back door. One threatened them with the blade while the others took 2 sets of car keys. Cancer research here in Manchester is officially better than anywhere else in the UK. A government study's praising the partnership between Manchester University, the Christie and Cancer Research UK. Treatments pioneered here are now being used as routine ones worldwide, where they're saving thousands of lives. A coroner is calling for lifebelts to be installed at a Greater Manchester lake where 2 teenage boys drowned in a freak accident. Lee Flanagan and Craig Flynn died in July when they got into difficulties swimming at the council-owned Knott Hill Lake in Ashton-under-Lyne. They started struggling when they were around halfway across the water and began shouting to friends. Henshaw's Society for the Blind have held their annual carol concert at Manchester Cathedral. It was supported by William Roach and Sue Nichols, who play Ken and Audrey in Coronation Street, and we were there as well.
Henshaw's is one of the oldest, if not the oldest charity in Manchester that looks after blind and visually impaired people. It's been going 170 years. Started in Manchester by a Manchester man called Thomas Henshaw. Many, many years ago, started with his legacy, and it's been going ever since.
Cheshire Building Society places a great deal of store by putting things back into the community, and this is just a great event to be able to be associated with. And it's the 3rd year that we will have been sponsoring this event, and it's just a great event leading up to Christmas.
The Carols by Candlelight is really about being part of the Greater Manchester community, and all of our friends and supporters get the chance to see some of our people from Henshaw's perform, and also people from Henshaw's come and sing and be part of the community.
Let's take a look at the lunchtime sports headlines now with the details. Here's Sam Goodman.
Thank you, James. Well, Manchester United are coming to the end of their FIFA Club World Cup game against Gamba Osaka, and their latest score is that it's 5-1. Manchester United took the lead with Nemanja Vidic from a corner. Then Granado scored a corner, and there's just been 4 goals within the space of 4 minutes. Rooney scoring 2, Darren Fletcher getting the other, and it's 5-1. There's about 10 minutes left. And I'll have all the highlights from Japan in our news bulletin at 5 o'clock this evening. Well, hundreds of United fans are in Japan hoping to see their team lift the trophy on Sunday, and Channel M's Nina Warhurst has been following them.
Welcome to Yokohama, Japan's second biggest city, just 16 miles from Tokyo and home to this year's World Club Cup final. And this is the stadium where on Thursday night Manchester United will take on Gamba Osaka, the champions of the Asian Confederation. And if United go on to Sunday's final and win it, they'll then be crowned champions of the world. And it's an occasion hundreds of Reds wouldn't dare miss. All 1,000 tickets allocated to United fans have been sold.
I mean, it's a chance to show the world that they are the best club in the world. It's all the champions of all the continents, and we can so we're the best.
Well, it's a place they haven't been, so I've decided to go, and we're following them for 50-odd years. I'm entitled to go somewhere.
It's the ultimate as far as we're concerned as regards the best club in the world, and we'll follow them as long as we can afford to do it.
To be champions of planet Earth would be good, but I think it's more about experiencing Tokyo and what it's got to offer as much as seeing United play, I think.
And from a typically measured excitement from members of the Red Army heading over from Manchester to hysteria from their Japanese comrades.
Rooney. Cristiano Ronaldo. Rooney.
Rooney! Ronaldo!
Their player is Cristiano Ronaldo. Park Ji-sung, same Asian player. So that's our pride.
So as players make their final preparation for Thursday's big game, fans from across the world are determined to see them lift that trophy on Sunday and become champions of the world. And just like in Moscow in May, this is a chance for fans from Manchester to experience a whole different nation and culture. Join us on Friday when we'll be finding out how this Eastern adventure compares to the last. Nina Warhurst for Channel M News in Japan.
We've just had news that Gamba Osaka have just scored, so it's now United 5, Gamba Osaka 2. And there'll be plenty more from Japan on Channel M tomorrow, beginning with Mike on The Breakfast Show from 6 o'clock. Manchester City are in UEFA Cup action against Racing Santander this evening. The latest team news we have is that Benjani, Joe and Daniel Sturridge are likely to miss the game as City look to secure the win, which would see them top their group and secure a favourable draw in the next round. Well, there's plenty more sport from me at 5 o'clock, but just enough time to let you know that Craig Watson's Commonwealth title defence against Adnan Ammar, which was meant to take place in Dublin this evening, has been called off after the challenger withdrew through illness. Well, that's all the sport from me this evening. Join me again when I'll reveal who the Lancashire cricket team will start their season against. We'll have more later.
Thank you very much, Sam. More sport in the early evening news from 5 o'clock. Still ahead between now and 1 o'clock then. Staff at Woolworths face up to an uncertain future, and we're looking at the chances of having a white Christmas.
There are one or two computer models available to us all now on the internet and start to give us an indication of what sort of weather we could expect on Christmas Day.
Welcome back to Channel M's Lunchtime News. We're here every day between 12 and 1 with all Greater Manchester's headlines. You can always check out our reports as well online at channelm.co.uk. On there right now, more from our reporter out in Japan following Manchester United, and pictures from the finish of a courageous walk by cancer patient Tom Buckley coast to coast that finished earlier on this week. That's at channelm.co.uk. Next, 27,000 people are facing the reality of losing their jobs after Woolworths administrators announced it's shutting all 800 stores by early January. They've so far failed to find a buyer for the chain. One of the areas the impact of this will be most felt is in Castleton, where Woolworths has one of its main depots.
At Woolworths' main depot, lorries were stacked up, much like the company's financial problems. Administrators haven't been able to find a buyer for the business, and if they don't find one at the last minute, the first of its 800 stores will close the day after Boxing Day. By January the 5th, all will have shut their doors for good. Staff arriving for work in Castleton are among 27,000 who face losing their jobs.
It's very upsetting since I'm an employee, so I'm just going to go in now. I don't want to say any more, thanks.
OK.
Only as agency driver, so it will be less work for me, less work for everybody over here. Yeah.
And how do you feel about the news?
No good, because Woolworths is here, I think, over 100 years, so yeah.
And how do your colleagues feel? The people you work with?
All the same, all searching for other work, will be less work over here.
Passers-by from Castleton were also saddened by news of Woolworths' demise.
I don't work here, but I think it's terrible. It'll just kill Castleton and that'll be it, and that's all we've really to say, you know.
It's really sad when I walk down here in the morning, because I pass people that work at Woolworths and say good morning to them even though you don't know them, and faces are just disappearing. It's just really sad.
I've known people like that have been laid off already, yeah. Obviously they're not happy because some of them are people that are not long since got out of school, people that have worked here for a long time, and, you know, it's not nice so close to Christmas for anybody to lose a job, is it?
News of the imminent closures will come as a concern not only to Woolworths' 27,000 staff, but also to other retailers. Its distribution arm, Entertainment UK, supplies about a third of the country's music CDs, as well as some DVDs, and it too is in big trouble, having failed to find a buyer. Job losses for the staff and supply problems for other retailers are a bitter pill to swallow at any time, but especially so close to Christmas. Ben Bland, Channel M News.
The BBC's been fined £95,000 for faking radio competitions. The regulator Ofcom's handed out the penalty for what it's called serious breaches of its code in shows on Radio 2 and BBC London. Listeners were invited to take part in competitions on shows that were pre-recorded. Tram fares will go up in the new year. The rise comes in from Monday the 5th of January and will average 3.6%. Single and off-peak return tickets to the city centre will go up by a maximum of 20 pence and peak returns by a maximum of 30. Weekly and season ticket prices have been frozen. New Year will literally go with a bang in the centre of Manchester. It's been announced there'll be a firework display set off from the top of the Arndale Centre. Partygoers will be able to gather in Exchange Square to watch. There's been criticism in the past of the single rocket, which has previously been fired at midnight. Now, just a week to go till Christmas, and your thoughts might be turning to whether or not we're going to get snow on the big day. Well, apparently the chances are slimmer than they were some years ago, and for one schoolgirl, this is a topic that's fascinated her so much, she's been invited to the Met Office to find out more about the changes.
We're about, what are we at now, 8 days or so from Christmas Day itself. That's still a fairly long distance out in weather terms, but there are one or two computer models available to us all now on the internet which stretch out that far and start to give us an indication of what sort of weather we could expect on Christmas Day. We're probably not going to be seeing much or any in the way of snow. Maybe a bit of whiteness from frost. We might have one or two problems with fog as well. Again, that all is going to come down to exactly where the high pressure sits down on the day. But it certainly looks like a fairly settled picture. Possibly a little bit on the chilly side, possible problems from frost and fog, but snow doesn't look like it this year.
Well, back to today's weather now, and looking ahead to this afternoon and into the weekend is Michelle Eagleton.
Taking a look at the weather today, this morning has been fairly mild really. We've seen highs of between 9 and 10 across most of Greater Manchester, and it's stayed dry. We've had actually some sunshine in Preston. I know it suffered a lot yesterday, but it seems to be on the up today. This afternoon though, a little bit of a different picture, so make sure that you do have your brollies to hand. I believe you are going to need them, say about 2-3 o'clock. Let me first take you through how 9 o'clock looked this morning. It was very, very overcast in most places, and there was a bit of a strong wind creeping in from the westerly direction. That wind unfortunately has got a lot worse and also has that cloud as well. That's why you're going to see some rain this afternoon, staying with us into the evening. So if you've got plans for tonight, make sure you wrap up nice and warm. The next couple of days pretty much the same kind of picture, I'm afraid. Tomorrow starting off dry, and then there is going to be quite a bit of rain that is expected. Saturday and Sunday, a bit of a wet washout, and then on Monday we're going to see a bit of a glimmer of hope, some sunshine mixed in with those showers and highs of around 8.
LM's lunchtime news, our main headlines this afternoon. Manchester has been named one of the worst alcohol black spots in the country. 5 of our boroughs are in the top 10 for places where people have done themselves harm by drinking too much. There's a warning the extra cold start to the winter has given ambulance crews their busiest week ever. More call-outs for falls and breathing problems have added to the workload. A man who murdered his wife in Zimbabwe 4 years ago and tried to pretend she'd killed herself is waiting to be sentenced. Michael Bamford from Rochdale shot her once in the head. And an update now on Manchester United's game in the World Club Cup over in Japan against Gamba Osaka. The match is now finished. The final score there, Manchester United winning 5-3, putting them through to the final. More on those stories in our early evening news later. That's with Andy Crane from 5. But to end today's programme, we're returning to our Christmas choir competition, which was won by St Peter's C of E Junior School in Lee. Last night we squeezed, and it was a squeeze, all 50 or so of them into our studio at Urbis, and here's them performing their winning song. From me for now, bye-bye.